Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Agree or Disagree the podcast. My name is Kevin Olenek. You can, of course, find me on Facebook, Kevin Olenek. You can like Agree or Disagree the podcast on Facebook as well. You can follow me on Twitter at KEVOLE or at ARD the podcast. You can also subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, iHeartRadio, wherever you can find podcasts, your favorite podcasts. Today, we're doing something, I wouldn't say a little bit different, but I do think this is a very important topic. Jeremy Crowhurst was in need of some hope and some help, so he reached out. Let's listen to a little bit here.
Life at the Crowhurst household in Abbotsford is joyful and challenging. All three of their children live with autism. And now Dad Jeremy desperately needs a kidney transplant. His is functioning at just 10% due to an autoimmune disorder.
My body decided that my kidneys were the enemy, and it started attacking my kidneys. And really overnight, I lost half my kidney function.
Almost everyone in Jeremy's family has kidney issues, so they're unable to donate. Desperate to stay alive and care for his family, the 51-year-old Crown prosecutor is asking people to consider contacting Transplant BC about being a living donor.
I almost think like it's panhandling for body parts. Hey, brother, can you spare a kidney? But the reality is everybody can spare a kidney. You don't only need one kidney to get by.
For now, Jeremy's survival hinges on taking his daily medications and doing dialysis 3 times a week.
It takes 2 people to keep our family going. I can't do it by myself. So,
This Abbotsford dad, just one of 534 British Columbians waiting for a kidney transplant. Despite the wait list, this family remains hopeful they'll have many more Christmases together.
Yeah, so the good news is since that report came out from Global News, people have reached out. More than 20 people came forward to an offer to donate. The bad news is he's still waiting, and it's after Christmas. Now, in a previous email when I was connecting with Jeremy, he said that he's felt a bit out of the loop until it's time to call and say, we have a donor, let's schedule the surgery. So he's still waiting. For those who don't know, a living donor transplant is a procedure where a person agrees to donate one of their 2 kidneys to the transplant system. Surgeons perform a minimally invasive surgery to remove a living donor's kidney and then insert that kidney into the abdomen of the kidney transplant patient. To share his story and to share where he is at, Jeremy Crowhurst joins us now from Abbotsford. How are you today?
I'm good, Kevin. How are you?
Good. Good. Let's start maybe before the news story. What made you decide to take this step of asking for help?
Well, it happened all very suddenly. Over the last couple of years, the people at the transplant center and the kidney clinic encourage everybody who needs a kidney or who might need a kidney down the road to just start actively telling their story to other people and reaching out. But my wife and I both found that very, very difficult to do. We're private people. We have trouble asking people for help. We're very self-reliant and independent. And so I hadn't really taken any steps at all towards doing that. I talked to one person and then they weren't in a position to help out, and that was sort of it. Then I was in court in early October, and I ran into my good friend Paul Doroshenko, and he and I hadn't seen him in quite a while, so we're sort of just catching up. And I mentioned, hey, I'm on dialysis. My kidneys crashed a few weeks ago, and I've started dialysis. And he went and he spoke to his law partner Kyla Lee, and Kyla contacted me that day, and she was wanting to do whatever she could to help out. And I mean, I know I've done quite a few files with Kyla over the years as well, so I know her pretty well. And they're both just incredibly wonderful people. And Kyla knew the reporter, Catherine Urquhart, and she got in touch with Catherine. Catherine had a news crew out to my house the next day. And I knew Catherine a little bit. She has done some other stories in the autism community before, and she had interviewed my wife a couple of years ago on a story about some about tolls on the Port Mann Bridge. So, I knew who she was, and she knew who we were. But, she took the opportunity to come out and do the story, and then just like that, it's on the air, and it just happened, like I say, really quickly.
And so you mentioned that you had some personal contacts from some people that were willing to help out. Tell us a little bit about that and what has happened there.
It's really quite overwhelming. Catherine came out on Thursday, and then my first phone call, the first contact happened at Friday at 3 p.m. in my office. Somebody phoned me from Edmonton, wanting like a complete stranger wanting to donate, and I gave her the information. I thanked her. We spoke for quite a bit. It really is overwhelming to have people reaching out like this. And I said, well, how did you know about this? And she said, oh, it's all over the internet. The story has aired. And I guess a different time zone, it aired an hour earlier or whatever. And so she had seen it, and she saw Abbotsford Crown Council. She looked up the phone number. She phoned the switchboard. They put her through to me. And there you go. And then the contacts kept coming in. There were people from all over Canada, all different walks of life. There were people that I know, people who I'm acquainted with, some defense counsel, some Crown prosecutors, some people who have had troubles with the law over the years but have turned things around and are looking to give back. Lots of people in the autism community, parents in the autism community. And it's just, from all kinds of walks of life. And it's really touching when you get an email from somebody you don't know. And I think most people reached out via Facebook Messenger, because I'm on Facebook and easy to find that way. And there was about 25 people that contacted me directly, and it's just overwhelming. And then I know that there were more people who contacted the kidney center, the transplant clinic directly, without calling me, but I don't know how many.
Oh, so yeah. So what is the procedure of becoming a match? Tell us a little bit because I mean, there's a lot on the internet, but you probably have you're going through probably a very different experience of what people could Google. So tell us a little bit about what that procedure has been like.
Well, sure. The first thing, they get in touch with the kidney transplant clinic, and then they give you sort of a package of stuff. Will tell you what the various steps to do. The first thing they have to do is a blood test to make sure that the blood types match. So I'm blood type A positive, and that means I can accept a kidney from anybody who's type A or type O positive or negative. And that's about 85% of the population. Most people, those are the two biggest blood groups out there. So I'm very lucky to have a good blood group. So once they get confirmation of the blood type, they send out, I think the next thing is there's quite a lengthy questionnaire, about like an 18-page questionnaire that asks about all kinds of things to do with your health and your health history. It even goes into things like, have you had a tattoo in the last year? Where did you go? Are they certified? Because I mean, you're getting a needle in the arm. It's something that can potentially pass something to that person, and they want to make sure that the donors are absolutely 100%, as healthy as can possibly be. There's always a concern about HIV, Hep C, but other things as well. So there's all kinds of questions that people have to answer, and I think some of those questions that I understand are quite personal. But it's a lengthy questionnaire, and then they submit that. I believe the next step is there's a second blood test, which is the antigen test. So everybody matches on blood type. I mean, 85% of the people are going to match on blood type, but the antigen test is really where the rubber meets the road. This is where they find out if my body is going to reject the kidney or not. So there's 6 antigens in particular, and they're looking for a match on as many as possible. So if I had an identical twin, my identical twin would match all 6. if I had a sibling who was in a position to donate, they might match all 6, but probably they would match 2 or 3. And so as you move further out the family chain, the chances of a strong match just start to revert to the match of any random person. The good news is that the kidney rejection drugs now are so much better than they've ever been, so that the antigen test, as I understand it, is not as critical as it was 25 years ago. And they say that if you have a kidney from a dead person that's a 6 out of 6 match, and a kidney from a live donor that's 0 out of 6, you're better off with the live donors 0 out of 6. It'll last longer, and it's more likely to be accepted. And so then after that, there's a series of medical appointments. You go see your GP. They explain everything that's involved in donating a kidney. Make sure that you're able to do it. I believe there's a meeting with a psychologist to see if you have the right, you're in the right place where you can realistically do it, and social workers. And then,
for the donator, you mean? For the person that's wanting to donate, you mean?
Yeah, for the person who's wanting to donate. Chest X-rays, check for tuberculosis is all part of it, and it's a lot of work, and a lot of people. I certainly understand, and I'm grateful for all the people who reached out and are willing to donate, but there's some people that just can't do some of the things. Like there's one person I know who lives in I want to say Kamloops, and they have to come to VGH to do one of the tests, and they can't get there. They just can't do it. So that's somebody who's going to sort of drop out of the process just because of inability to complete the steps. And obviously I understand that, and not everybody's in a position where they can do all this, and so people who do respond early do tend to fall away. Some people just lose the motivation, and others realize it's just not something they can do. It is a very safe procedure, but you are on your back for I'm not really sure how long. It might be a week or two, might be longer. But one guy who responded is a father of a special needs son. He's a single dad. Well, he can't be laid up for a week or two with a special needs kid and a couple of other kids. So he's not going to be able to do it. But again, I mean, I'm so grateful for the people for responding. I really can't even tell you. And then beyond that, I'm not exactly sure, but I know the process does take several months. They describe it as donor driven, so it's up to the donor to do the steps that are necessary, and then once they have a match, they call me and they say, okay, let's book the surgery, and here's the person, and let's have you two meet and go from there.
Yeah, so it sounds like a pretty comprehensive process that takes obviously, if you're giving up a kidney, there's a huge sacrifice there for sure. What have you? There's so many directions I want to go, but I think the one I want to ask you is about the actual process in terms of do you feel like you've been well communicated considering the situation that you're in? Like, what are your thoughts? Like, I guess basically the nutshell is what are you learning from being involved in the healthcare system that either surprises you or impresses you?
Well, I wish I had more information about what was going on, but they have to do it this way, and this is the way it's done all over North America. You have to keep the recipient in the dark about the process, because you can't have the donor being pressured by anybody. So the information about where they are in the process and whether they've passed this test or that test, it has to be completely confidential, so the donor can always stay without guilt or repercussions. I'm sorry I didn't match, even if they just have changed their mind. It's very important that the donor be doing this freely of their own free will, not for ulterior motives, not for financial gain or anything like that, not because somebody else is pressuring them. And so they always need to have that out. So that means they can't tell me anything about anyone or the process. And it has to be that way. They have to protect the donors. This is why the testing is so intense. Is the last thing that they want to ever have happen is a headline saying kidney donor dies on the table, because that's the end of the program. Nobody would donate a kidney if there was that kind of risk. So
Right.
they make sure that it's as safe as possible, that the donor is in a perfect position to give, and that there's really zero risk of those kinds of consequences. But the whole process is, in terms of me, it's interesting. It's strange how quickly something becomes the new normal. So I'm going to dialysis 3 times a week, and it's basically 5 hours each time. And I got this tube sticking out of my neck, and they go and they plug me in, and the bells and the whistles are going off on the machine from time to time, and I just sit there and read a book or work on my computer, and it's just strange. But this is just what I do now. This is just a part of my life. I go to dialysis 3 times a week, and.
Yeah, that was another question I had. Like for yourself, like in terms of you, how are you doing? It's how are you dealing with your new normal, as you've just called it?
It's it really is. It's interesting. I mean, one of the things that's sort of been on my mind a lot is it's kind of challenged my my idea of identity, which I think is a pretty good thing to be challenged. We all start with the position, oh, I'm Canadian, I'm American, I'm Australian, I'm whatever. But you start looking into your background, and you find, if you've seen one of those Ancestry commercials, that people might think they're this and they end up being that when they check the DNA. Now, I'm getting somebody else's kidney. That person could be First Nations, they could be South Asian, they could be Oriental, they could be any ethnic group, whatever. And so does that literally make me part South Asian, part First Nations? I don't know. I mean, it's the sort of thing that's been on my mind. It's interesting, this idea that I'm taking somebody else's body part. I would want to be a part of that. I would think of that person as being like family once I'm taking their kidney. And I don't know if that's how it works in terms of other people who receive kidneys, but the whole thing it's just, I don't know, it's interesting.
And you're in the story that we shared earlier. How is the family doing right now? How did Christmas go, and how are things now?
Well, the adjustment to the dialysis was difficult. We all got a case of the flu, really twice, in October and then in December. And, the 15 hours that I spend doing dialysis, it takes a toll on the family. It really does, because with 3 special needs kids, we really have our hands full, and my wife, is run ragged as a stay-at-home mom. And with me not able to come around and pull my weight, that's 15 hours of stuff that's not getting done every week, and it's really hard, and it's really challenging. So we're still working on that, and we've had a little bit of help from outside, but we're mostly on our own. My brother and sister are both out of province, and my mother is 85 years old, and she's not able to help much, and Melissa's family is all out of town, and we're not really close with them. So, we don't have a lot of outside support. But the kids are a delight. I mean, they just adjust to everything. They're funny, and they're loving, and just beautiful little kids. And the fact that they don't speak, and they have some limitations, and it's I don't know what to say. They're the light of my life, and but yeah, it's a challenge. The adjustment has been difficult.
So it sounds like there's a bit of not only the actual need of a kidney. It sounds like, I'm hearing a little bit as you could use a bit more of a support in the support network, like just in like a physical sense too.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. But I mean, some of it is, we got to whip ourselves into shape. There's things that we've been doing that, we really.
Oh.
So we didn't always do things as efficiently as we could, and so now we have to buckle down. But yeah, the process does require support. Like for example, when I get the kidney, For the first 3 weeks, I have to drive into Vancouver to VGH 3 times a week from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. So that means, and I can't drive. Somebody has to drive me. I have to get to VGH. So now we got that worked out. We have somebody who's going to be staying with us. They can look after the kids while Melissa takes me in, and then Melissa can do some stuff in town and then bring me back. And after 3-4 weeks, I'll be able to drive in myself. But I mean, that's a can be a real burden for a lot of people. Can you get to VGH by 7 a.m. 3 times a week for 3-4 weeks? And some people just can't. We're lucky. We have this worked out. We have a situation where somebody will be staying with, but there are times until that person's here, I'm always a little worried that's not going to happen. And then what are we going to do? But because the other thing is we don't know when the kidney is going to come. So
yeah, this could be tomorrow, or it could be the end of the year. It could be
exactly. And when you get a kidney from a living donor, there's some flexibility. You can schedule the surgery. If you want to do it in 2 weeks, whatever, there's flexibility. But if you get a kidney from a deceased person, it's a you come in here right now. You have 8, 12, 16 hours to get to the hospital, and we're doing the surgery right now. It's that kind of basis. It's that kind of urgency. So you got to have everything in place and be ready to go. Now, in terms of a deceased donor, I have a long wait for a kidney from, just in terms of the waiting list. So that's why the living donor is preferable. The other thing is, I'm a little unusual in that I'm getting the dialysis through the tube in my neck. Most people do it through a fistula in their arm, and that's really safe. The chance of infection is really low, and it's easy. The dialysis goes more smoothly and at a higher volume. With the catheter in my neck, I'm at a greater risk of infection, and because it's so close to my heart, if there's a problem, things could go south very quickly. So, there is a kind of urgency because I'm not able to get the dialysis through my arm. Mm-hmm. So, that's part of the equation too.
And yeah, we talked a little bit about how are you are still practicing law through this as well.
Yep.
How are you balancing all of that?
Well, my coworkers are very understanding, and I work for the government as a Crown prosecutor here in Abbotsford, and I do my court day on Tuesday. I'm in charge of prosecuting young offenders in Abbotsford admission, and then also some adults, depending on the first letter of their last name. I have three letters of the alphabet, and I mean I'm able to do my stuff during the day. You have to keep in mind the dialysis actually makes me feel better than I did before I started it, because my kidney function was pretty low. And so with the dialysis, my blood is getting cleaned more than it was before I started. So on a day-to-day basis, if there's no complications going on, I feel pretty good and I'm able to do my work. But there are bad days mixed in with the good, and it becomes a little bit more challenging. But my colleagues my supervisor in particular has been very flexible, and the overall boss of the Fraser region is just a wonderful guy I've known a long time. He's very understanding. And, they're really pleased that I'm able to come in and do it at all. And, because our office is short-staffed, all the offices are short-staffed. But I'm able to get it done. And there's things I can't do, like I wouldn't be able to do trials in Supreme Court. That it requires a degree of, a level of intensity and preparation that I'm not able to meet right now. So I'm doing, as I say, sort of the upfront stuff where you're doing guilty pleas or setting things for trial and working out disclosure with the police, deciding what charges go ahead. The upfront stuff in the prosecution, which is it's not like it's a little less taxing, but more to the point, there's a lot more flexibility.
So it's good at least that it's interesting to the adjustment. Are there things that you miss though? Do you miss sort of going to Supreme Court, or is there things that you're like, man, I really miss that? Or is it in some ways you're learning a little bit more about what you like about your job? Like, I don't want to say positive, negative, but what's your perspective now on what your job is?
Well, I really like doing the young offender stuff. I really like dealing with the youths and the youth workers. You can really achieve something, with people who are still open to change in a way that you can't always do with people who are adults who've been in the system for a long time. So I'm really happy with doing what I'm doing now. From a practical point of view, I don't want to be driving a Chilliwack, which is where the Supreme Court is.
Yeah.
So I don't want to do jury trials just for that. I mean, we got a lot of, even when I'm perfectly healthy, there's so much to do here around the house. It's just, it's not practical. And so it's been a while since I've done jury trials. But when the new courthouse opens in a couple of years, or a year and a half, I expect I will be put into that role once I have the new kidney and everything's going well and the kids are a little older and all in school. But, it's a great job. Like we get to see a side of people's lives that we really have no right to. We see them at their best and their worst, and you learn so much about people, about human nature. And as I say, you're seeing things and learning things about people you have no right to know, but it comes out in the course of a prosecution and a charge approval. And then seeing how people handle the situation as the weeks and months pass on, tempers cool down, perspectives change, and we have to deal with that in terms of handling the files. So whether I'm doing trials or whether I'm doing bail hearings or whether I'm doing the guilty pleas, it's a great job, and I'm just so blessed to have it. It's 19 years this past December. I've been a prosecutor.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Almost hit the 20. And how old are your kids?
My oldest is 7.5, and my middle child is 5, turning 6 in a couple of months, and the youngest is 4, turning 5 in a couple of months. The two youngest ones are 11 months apart.
Okay.
So come April, I'm going to have a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 5-year-old.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's I'm sure they're a big joy in your life. You've already mentioned.
Oh man, yeah, you have no idea.
Is there anything else that we wanted to kind of go through here that we've missed?
It's not really. I guess it's one of the things that I struggled with before the story aired.
Yeah.
Is, well, why would anybody want to give me a kidney? Like, why would anybody do this? And I was just surprised at how willing people were. Like, well, dude, I'll give you a kidney. Like, what's the problem? Why didn't you just ask? And just they don't think a second thought about it. And it just seems like there are. It has changed my view of human nature to see that there are so many people who are have that kind of generosity and are willing to help a complete stranger. And I'm one of the people on the list, but there's lots of others, and it's something for people to think about. That you can you can donate a kidney and change somebody's life, somebody who you don't know, and it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody who you saw on global TV or heard on a podcast, or it could be somebody else, and so I mean that's something people can think about.
Yeah, because it's over 500 people waiting for kidneys in British Columbia, as is. So it's not only yourself going through this; it's a process.
Yeah. And let me just add one thing. I mean, like I said earlier, A positive. So 85, 88% of the population. But I have a friend who I've known for 30 years. She waited 6 years to get a transplant. She's I think her blood type was B, which is less than 10%. It took a long time for her to find a match, and that's 6 years of dialysis that was really taxing on her. I am fairly lucky that, assuming I don't have any complications with the thing being so close to my heart, I will get a kidney at some point. But there are some people who the waiting for them is much longer, and if you're blood type A, B, or type B, it might be something to think about. It's you can really change a person's life and change it a lot quicker than they would ever have hoped.
So just for people, and I don't know this, so I'm learning
Sure.
as I'm doing this, but it's like can you, let's say, okay, I've decided, you know what, I'm going to live with one kidney.
Right.
Can I donate my kidney now as a living donor? And if someone like yourself, or if there is a match out there, that they could match that? Or does it have to be, we meet, we make sure it's a match, they still have to go there through that same process that you were talking about earlier and decide that you and the donor are a match?
That's a great question. I'm not sure how exactly that whole thing works. I think, I'm not sure I can answer that. If you contact them and you say, I'm willing to be a donor, do they do the first? Obviously, they do the blood type test. I don't know if they do the second test, and then they start looking at, the people who need kidneys. I'm not sure how that works. They can tell you that at the transplant center, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, because I have the reason I asked is I did a podcast, and unfortunately I can't find it now for some reason, but I did a podcast with the first living organ donor, and she doesn't know where the organ. I don't think she knows where the organ is.
Okay.
So, and this was in Alberta, so I'm like, is that possible? Is it?
Yeah.
That it seems like that's possible, but I don't. It just popped in my head, and I think the other thing that is a really good reminder of this too is signing your donor card.
Absolutely.
That's a really important thing when and if that time comes, that can be.
One of the things that's happened, this is a little morbid to talk about, but there are very few silver linings with the opioid crisis that we've been having over the last couple of years. It's a horrible thing that, working in the legal community, it's terrible. We've seen so many people that we dealt with on a regular basis who passed away from overdoses, but it has cleared up a lot of the organ donor lists. So there's a lot, because a lot of the people who overdosed are young people who are otherwise in pretty good health, and the drugs don't really affect the kidneys. They might make the liver not appropriate for a donation, but the kidneys are good to go, and I think one or two other things as well. So that's something that has helped. Now, I don't know how it works in BC as opposed to other provinces, but I know some places are very, insistent on the donor card, and I get the sense that in BC it might work the other way, that you're presumed to be a donor unless you say you're not. That's something I should probably know before I start talking about it. But oh my goodness, it is so important for them to know, because things happen, and I've seen so many cases over the years of people taken just in the prime of their lives, for no fault of their own, car accident, or sometimes they're an unintended bystander of a crime. And I think for the families of the victims, it's good for them to know that a part of their child lives on in somebody else, and that some good has come out of what is for them a really unspeakable tragedy. And it's like I say, something to consider. But you certainly don't need your organs when you're gone. So I would certainly encourage everybody to make sure they have that on their, I guess it goes on the driver's license.
I think so. Yeah. I'll have to change that myself. Yeah. So how do people contact you if they want to support you in any way, whether that is be a kidney donation, or even spend some time helping you with something that you could use some support with, or, you haven't said this, but there is a tremendous cost to this as well. I'm sure it's taken a toll on you financially, but in any way that someone can help you, how do they contact you?
Some friends of ours did set up a GoFundMe page in our name, and that's one thing if people want to help out financially. there, but otherwise, I'm like I say, I'm on Facebook, Jeremy Crowhurst. I use my real name. I don't change my name for that purpose. Um, One thing that's good to know: lawyers are really, really easy to find because we have to be registered with the Law Society of British Columbia, and they have a website where you can look up any lawyer, and it gives you their contact information. So it gives you their work number and sometimes their work email address. So that's always some way. I always tell people when they say, "Oh, I lost your number," I say, "That's no excuse. Go to the Law Society webpage. You know what I do for a living. Look me up that way." But my I'm on Facebook and Facebook Messenger, and a lot of people contact me that way, and that might be the best way for people to reach out.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm going to put all the links in the podcast here so people can check that. And I guess so for the people that are outside of BC or even outside of the Vancouver, Abbotsford, Chilliwack area, and they're considering donating, let's leave it because this will go out to a wider range of audience. What is something you want people to be aware of? Because you mentioned that there was someone in Kamloops that didn't have the ability to travel here. So
yeah, well, I guess the thing I want people most to be aware of is just ask. Just send the email to the kidney donor nurse at vch.ch is the email address, and if you have questions, just they're certainly not going to pressure you to get on board. If you have any interest in doing it, that's who to go to. And obviously in different provinces there's different agencies, and you can find those on the internet. But I feel there is some guilt associated with this whole process. I'm very fortunate to be friends with Paul and to be friends with Kyla, and that they're friends with Catherine, and that Catherine thought that this was a good idea to put on TV. And but there's hundreds of other people who don't have three really cute kids to make for a sympathetic story, and there's some guilt on my part that through the connections that I have, this is all happened, and I've had people come forward. What about everybody else? There's a lot of great stories of people who need kidneys, and they don't make it onto the media. And I think I want people to know you never know who you're helping, but there's a lot of good people out there. This really is a life-changing process. Being having to deal a little bit more with my own mortality than I really ever have in the past, and it has changed my outlook on things. I think I'm certainly a lot more chill than I was 6 months ago, it is a transformative process in a lot of ways, and I don't know. So yeah.
Well, I think what you're doing when you're advocating for yourself is you're advocating for others too. I think that becomes a kind of an almost organic thing that just naturally happens, and I think what you talked about even in the story, you talked about feeling like you're panhandling, and I think that there's so many people out there that just are so afraid to reach out that it just, I hope that they're at least encouraged by you sharing that they share their story too, because it is something that I think we don't talk enough about the importance of donating organs and stuff. So.
Well, the other thing is the importance of just being able to ask for help.
Yeah.
Now, I'm 52 now. I was raised in the 70s, and my parents' attitude at the time was, you don't want to be a burden on somebody else. You always have to be courteous. You don't want to be in somebody's way if you're driving down the street. Oh, you can't stop here because that's going to inconvenience the person behind you. There's a whole set of things like that in a way gave myself and my brother and sister a sense that maybe we weren't worth as much as other people. When you start, there's a line between consideration and then devaluing. And I think the problems that I have asking for help go back to, those attitudes. And I can give some more extreme examples, but my mom might end up listening to this, and I don't want to get in trouble.
That our generation certainly was. Yeah. We had that ingrained in us. We don't ask for help, and especially as men, we got to do this on our own because that's the tough thing to do, right?
Exactly.
And
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's when I say it's like panhandling. I mean, it kind of is. I mean, but and then I think that really comes from a sort of a lower place of lower self-worth and lower self-esteem that I think a lot of us who came out of the 70s have.
Yeah.
And we got to get past it. We have to be able to ask for help in a productive and positive way. And I'm so grateful to Catherine for doing the story and helping me to do that. She really made it easy, and
yeah. Well, let's hope that this helps you a little bit in some way, shape, or form. And I really do thank you for taking the opportunity to come on the podcast and chat with us about where you're at.
Sure.
But we'll follow up with this for sure, kind of keep in contact, and we'll have all the links there. Again, check Jeremy Crowhurst out on Facebook. He's on Facebook Messenger. There is a GoFundMe, which will be a link in the podcast if you want to donate financially. And check with your local kidney foundation, or check with your doctor, check with your medical experts in your life, and see about that procedure, and consider it not only for Jeremy, but maybe for someone else.
There's one other thing I should mention that we haven't talked about.
Sure.
And that's the idea of the kidney chain. So let's say I have a friend who's willing to donate, but he's a type B and he doesn't match for me. There might be somebody in Prince George who's a type B and needs a kidney and has a friend who's a type A willing to donate. And they do set up these sort of cross exchanges where, my friend gives to the other guy, his friend gives to me. So when you are, registering or contacting the people, you can mention that might be the sort of thing that you're interested in as well. And then you have two people getting kidneys instead of just one.
Oh, great.
Sometimes they do it. It's more complicated. 3 or 4 people involved, and you got a big swap. Almost like players on draft day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got a trade or a 2-for-1. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
A center for a winger.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Well, thank you again, Jeremy. And again, you can find me on Facebook, Kevin Olenek, Like, Agree, or Disagree the podcast on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter at KEVOLE. SoundCloud, Spreaker, subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcast. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.
All right, bye-bye.